I'm about to show you the best swim bait hack you've ever seen in your life, and it works so well that if you try it, you can possibly catch up to 5 times more fish. To do so is easy. I will take you through the gear you need to make this modification, how to rig it up, then we'll head out on the water showing you how to fish it and how effective it can be, leaving you wondering how you didn't know about this sooner. So today we're going to be showing you how to do a line through swim bait. We will talk about why using a line through swim bait is beneficial later and how effective it can be, but first we got to go through the actual gear and show you how to set this thing up because it's different than your standard single hook jig head that you just shove it on there and you're good to go. I am going to briefly run through the rod, reel, and line setup here just in case you are curious. But more importantly are going to be the actual components of this rig because we're going to be doing it differently than you've ever seen before on a line through bait. But as for the rod, I'm using my Cashin Icon topwater and jerkbait rod. This is the same rod I fish my finesse swim baits on with a regular single hook. So it's the same rod I'm going to fish it on with this bait here. Especially with the exposed hooks, you don't need a lot of backbone to actually set the hook on these fish. They'll pretty much hook themselves. Then for the reel, I have a 7:4 gear ratio on here. This is actually the Shimano Scorpion I got in Japan, but I also have an SLX DC that I use as another popular reel as well. You don't need a DC reel to do this. Any 100 or 150 size reel that holds enough 12-pound straight fluorocarbon is all you really need. Make that long cast and have a fast gear ratio to be able to keep up with those fish. 12-pound test straight fluorocarbon is what I like on here so that my bait will maintain bottom contact and I have a direct connection to that bait, but it's a very thin diameter, so when that thing is on the bottom, I can keep it down there in deeper water and a lot longer with that thinner line. So the next thing you're gonna need for a line through swim bait is obviously a swim bait. How do you know which one to choose for this one? This is where you can get really creative, especially the way we're about to show you right here. You can use literally any size swim bait on this setup. It does not matter size, brand, anything. They will all work with this technique. The biggest thing for me is matching the size to the type of forage those fish are feeding on. So we're gonna be fishing in a river with a lot of fish feeding on small bait fish, shiners, shad, stuff like that. We're gonna be going with the Divine swim bait here. This is the 3.2 size. It is literally the same swim bait that I fish on a jig head for smallmouth. We're just gonna rig it up slightly differently. And then as for colors, again, you can use whatever color you want. Just pick the closest color to what those fish are feeding on to give you the most amount of success. Pro Blue seemed to be the one that caught us the most amount of fish, but I caught some on Clearwater Rose and Pro Shad as well. After a swim bait, you're going to need a treble hook. Since you're doing a line through swim bait, you need a treble hook to actually rig this up because you wouldn't want to use a single hook or else you would just use a jig head. So I'm going to be using the Owner Stinger treble hooks here. I really like these. They're just regular round bend, straight shank, semi-firm wire treble hooks. You don't need something with super strong wire because you are fishing this on a jerkbait rod, so you don't want something super thick, and you don't want extra wide gap hooks either because it's going to decrease the gap between your bait and the hook. So the reason to go to a line through swim bait is to hook up more. If you go to an extra wide gap hook, you're going to actually decrease your hookup ratio. So you want a round bend treble. The Owner Stingers are great. And the most important part is to choose a size treble hook that fits to your bait. So we're gonna be using a size 6 here, and you can see that those hooks, they don't go way too far off the body, they don't go way too up high off the body, they stay nice, compact, and close. If you put a size 4 or a size 2 on here, not only would that start to kill the action of your bait because you have too big of a hook, but you're gonna get snagged a lot more because that hook is gonna be way too large and sticking out from the bait. The next part is optional here, but using a split ring. If you have a split ring, what it will do is it'll cause a little bit of extra rotation in your bait. So if you hook up with a straight treble hook tied to your line, and the fish wants to loop around or do stuff like that, not only will it twist up your line a little bit more, but they can use that as leverage by turning that hook enough that they can actually pull it free from their mouth. Where if you have a split ring on there, it just adds a little bit extra twisting to it. So when choosing a split ring, again, don't go with anything too heavy of wire. You're using a jerkbait rod, so it's not gonna bend that split ring out. You will notice a little pro tip here. I took all the hooks out of the box and put all the split rings on here before I ever went to the lake, so that when I got snagged and it's 30 degrees outside winter smallmouth fishing, I don't have to sit there with a pair of split ring pliers and a microscopic split ring trying to put it on a hook to be able to get back out on the water. I can just take one out of the box, tie it on, and get right back in the lake. And the last and most important key to this technique is the 6" treble head right here. This is the piece that we're gonna use to make this a through line swim bait. You guys might have seen me do through line baits before on other techniques, and usually I use a rivet, and that's a very popular way to make a through line swim bait, but there's a couple downfalls to this as opposed to this one. The first downfall is that these treble heads are weighted, so we're fishing in a river for smallmouth. I actually want my bait to get down deeper in the water column, and these you can add weight to your line to get your bait down in the water column. So we have an 1/8 ounce, a 3/16 and a 1/4 that we're gonna be using today. I also have the 3/8 and the 1/2 ounce size. You can put on even larger swim baits and fish them for largemouth or other stuff. So that is a huge key to be able to add weight to your line, where a rivet does not. Your bait is going to be unweighted and will not get down to the bottom as much. The other thing is the line through portion on this bait is much gentler on your line. I've done line through baits on a fluke before using a rivet, and it does work, but if you're not careful, because this is metal, it will actually start to fray your line, so you have to retie fairly often. And there is one other benefit to these, but we will actually show you that out on the water while we're fishing, because it is a huge benefit while you're actually fishing on the water compared to a rivet, and we will talk about that one later. But if you'd like to get any of the gear in today's video, and specifically the 6" stuff, it will all be linked in the description below. You can help the channel out a ton by using my code Quince on the 6" website to continue making videos just like this for you guys. So now that you have all your gear laid out and you're ready to go, let's show you how to rig one of these up and get out on the water and start catching some fish. Okay, so to rig one of these up is super simple, and it takes like no time at all. So we're gonna walk you through this real fast before we head out on the water. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take our treble head right here, and this has this little screw keeper on here, which is gonna keep your bait on. So all I'm gonna do is center this up with the actual bait itself and twist it on. And I like to do this before I put my bait on the line, just because it gives it a little bit more meat and something I can work around. Now what we'll do is we'll take our line right here, and all we do is there's a hole right in the front here. You're gonna put your line through it, and it's gonna come right out the top so that you can have your hook on the back of your bait. Now this is free sliding on the line. I can slide this wherever I want. I'm gonna slide this so that it's out of the way, and take my tag end of line here, and we're gonna put our hook on. So you go ahead and just attach your split ring on here, or you could tie your treble hook direct to your bait. And then to finish this off, you literally just put this on like you would any other hook with your favorite knot. I love a Palomar, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it through where you have a loop in this hand, and you have your main line and your tag end over here. I will take that loop and I will cross it over behind the back. I will go through this loop here and then right over the hook with the loop that we have created. And the most important thing, one, you want to cinch it down to about here. I stop right there. And before I cinch this up, once I get it to here, I will make sure my split ring is resting on the hook with the split up against the actual treble hook. I do not want it on the line side here. I want that on the doubled up portion of the split ring. And then as long as you have that loop right there, you are good, and you can go ahead and cinch this down. Always wet your knots, but I'm not going to because this is a video, and I will just cinch that right up. And you clip off your tag end, and it is all ready to go. Now there's a couple ways you can place this hook, but most importantly, I'm gonna put one prong down into the bait. And you can see that bait has a center line that runs along the back there. I want that hook to land in that center line so that it keeps it straight and on the bottom where it's supposed to be, wobbling correctly, not anything crooked. Now, you can place this all the way back here in the tail. It will start to kill your action the further back you put it, but you'll get short strikes way better. Or you can put it all the way up here by the head, and it will give you the best action, but anything that bites back here will not get a hook. So what I like to do, where this center line ends, is I place my hook right off the back of that center line, right about there, and then you'll pull your split ring straight, and that is a finished bait right there, ready to go fishing. So your line goes through the head, comes out the top, your split ring is straight, this prong of the hook is being held in the bait, the hooks on top are tight, but they're exposed, ready to get a hookup, and they're about halfway back in the bait where I would have a jig head sitting anyway. Those fish can come right up and grab this thing. They're mostly gonna go head first anyway, and they're gonna get those 2 prongs in their mouth every single time. So now for the fun part, let's take this out on the lake, get to fishing, and catch us some fish. All right, so now that we got our gear all rigged up, it's time to put this little dude to work and show you how effective this can be over a single hook jig head swim bait. Today we're gonna be fishing a local river that I've been fishing on recently using some jig head single hook swim baits. We're gonna show you how to retrieve this, which it's not gonna be much different than that, but more importantly, we're gonna show you how effective this can be when you actually get a bite, set the hook on these fish, the things that will happen because you have this line through swim bait, and some little tricks along the way that actually aren't really noticeable with this bait, but I've learned along the way of using this little technique. So let's start casting and show you how effective this can be. The first thing we're gonna do, like we've done with all our other swim bait videos, we're gonna cast this out, long cast, and we're just gonna let this sink down to the bottom. Now, since you have that treble hook in there, if you bury the hook right and you choose the right size hook, not oversized like we talked about, you won't get snagged as easily because that hook is gonna stay tight to the body. And then now while I'm on the bottom, I'm just gonna slowly retrieve this just like I would a jig head single hook swim bait. And because that hook is on the back of this bait and a little bit further back, you should be able to roll over some of those rocks and logs that are down there on the bottom. Now don't get me wrong, it is a treble hook, you are gonna get snagged. Even with a jig head you'd get snagged, but most importantly with a treble hook you're definitely gonna get snagged because you have 2 points instead of 1. Got him. Got that one. Looks like a nice fish. Come here, buddy. He's not a bad one. So right here is why I love this treble hook so much. The first thing is if you had this fish on a jig head, that bait is pinned to that fish's mouth and they can use that as leverage to throw the bait, where when you hook them on this treble hook, it slides away from the fish and the only thing left in its mouth is that treble hook with a split ring. So it has some rotation. You're never gonna lose that fish once it gets hooked up. Now, I can go ahead and get this guy off. Nice little smallmouth right there. We're gonna catch us some more, hopefully some bigger than him. Can just slide my bait back up and stick my hook right back in the bait and I'm good to go again. However, this fish has chewed up my bait a little bit. The benefit to using these treble hooks though, as opposed to like a rivet or other means of making a through line swim bait, is that these are just on with a screw lock. So I can take my swim bait off right here, that's all chewed up. Now that I have another swim bait here, what I can do is just go ahead and thread this back on here like we did with our other swim bait earlier, and now I'm hooked up and ready to go again. Got that one. Of course you were off. Of course my camera's off. Why wouldn't it be off? Ugh. I think I actually got a nice one. Oh my gosh, it's a giant. It's a giant. Go figure the big camera turns off as soon as I catch the biggest one of the day. This thing's a freaking beast. Gotcha. Look at that one. So give this line through swim bait a try next time you're out. And if you want to master your basics of swim bait fishing as well, check this video out right here. Hit the subscribe button down below. And thanks for watching. This is an amazing technique to catch you a ton of bass just like this one.